What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my third installment in my QRP head-to-head series. So far we've taken a look at the Venustech SW3B, the LNR Precision MTR-4B, and the LNR Precision MTR-3B. So last time we put this radio up against the MTR-4B, and this radio won primarily just because of its diminutive size, right? This radio, it's so small and it's so light. It's very, very hard to not love this radio. It's a very compelling field radio to have. Just to give you an idea, all right, there's a deck of cards, okay? So it's literally the same size as a deck of cards, just to give you a little scale. I did this last time with my phone, but it's a little easier to do with these cards. All right, this radio is so small, it's not even funny. And that's one of the features that makes this such a compelling field radio, is it is so small. There's not another field radio on the market that is as full featured as this, that is this small. Can you get smaller? Yeah, you could do a Pixie or something, but and you're stuck with a mono band or even a mono frequency radio. This is a full featured field radio, multi-band, CW memories. It'll run on every frequency on those bands. You're not stuck at, I mean, those things are QRP, right? They're like, you know, milliwatts for power output. This thing will do almost 6 watts. So this is a very, very compelling field radio. And today we're going to put this up against another CW only field radio that has a cult following as well. As you can probably guess, that radio is the Elecraft KX1. Now, neither of these radios is easy to get. They have not been in production for a while. This one hasn't been in production for several years. This one's been out of production for, I don't even know, a long time. I mean, you know, this radio is probably from 2006, I don't know. It's old. This radio was also never sold as a factory assembled radio. These you buy as a complete radio. This was only available as a kit. Okay, so that's something you need to consider. If you're going to buy one of these, you really need to consider that. So if we take a look at our specs, we'll just rehash these specs so you remember. Our LNR Precision MTR-3B price, man, it's hard to say. You're lucky if you can find one for $500. I've seen them go for $600-700. It's 3.85 by 2.5 by 0.9 inches. It weighs 4.8 ounces. Power output's about 5 watts. It's actually a little over 5 watts. It'll do 40, 30, 20, and it's CW only. Now, the KX1, the price, man, good luck. It depends on the radio and the options it has, how it's configured. And there's also a stupid tax. So, like, a base radio, a 2-band radio, no tuner, you'll see them for, I've seen them for $500-600. I saw a 2-band radio with no tuner go on eBay for $750 not that long ago. That's insane. Don't do that, all right? I saw this same exact radio. This is a 4-band radio with the internal tuner. I saw one of these go on eBay with, the Pelican 1060 case that it fits in, all right? So, I mean, this is just a $50 Pelican case. And that one came with the paddle kit that you could get. So you could get a paddle kit. These paddles are kind of weird to send on, but they work. And the power cable, this one's got the little cheat sheet in it. Anyway, it came with a few other little ancillary things. That thing sold for like $1,250. Do not buy one of these radios for that kind of money. You have to be absolutely insane to buy this radio for that kind of money. You could buy a KH1 with every option for $1,100. That's a brand new radio. I mean, this thing's 15, 20 years old. You're insane if you're spending that kind of money on this radio. It's just not worth that much. At least I don't think it is. It's a good radio. It's not that good. I apologize for that. This GoPro just decided it was going to shut off. I've had it do that to me multiple times today. I'm ready to throw this thing out the window. I think it may be time to invest in a different camera. So, like I was saying, this radio, man, trying to find one is hard, and they're very expensive. It's 5.2 by 3 by 1.3 inches. It weighs 9 ounces. Power output's about 5 watts. It's actually a little less than that, which you'll see. Some of them have an internal tuner, some don't. My particular radio does. It has the ability to run internal batteries. I'll show you that. This particular radio is 80, 40, 30, 20. Some radios were 2-band, so we're 40 and 20. And some are 3-band, so they included 30. And then this one, it has all of the above. It's CW only. And again, it came only as a kit. So the quality of this radio is going to be entirely dependent on the person who built it. All right. If you watch Thomas Witherspoon's videos on his KX1, sorry, he has one that has given him absolute fits. The person who built it didn't do a tremendously good job, and it's just driven him nuts. This one, the guy who built this radio, was very anal about it. Everything inside is done really well. And the manual, when you see the manual, you'll see there's checklists inside when you build these things. He was very meticulous about everything he did. So the person who put this together really knew what they were doing. This radio works very, very well. So let's kind of just take a look at this MTR-3B, just to kind of give you a sort of a review of what this radio is like. Now, I'm not going to fire this radio up and key with it and everything. We did that in the last video. And if you want to see all the features of this radio, go back and watch my MTR-4B versus the SW-3B video, because this radio has basically the same feature set as the MTR-4B does, with a few minor exceptions. But we'll go ahead and we'll fire this thing up. So it's real simple. We've got our band switches to change 40, 30, 20. You'll see we're currently on 30 meters. It gives us our frequency, shows our key speed. It's got a real-time clock. It shows us our voltage. This radio has multiple CW members. It actually has 3 different CW memories. It's very simple to use. The interface is clean. This is a great field radio. There's a reason these are so sought after. They're so tiny. They're simple to use. They get the job done. These have a cult following for a reason. Okay. Now, the KX1 is a very different beast. It is much bigger. And when I say much bigger, I mean, you can see, where's my cards? Right? I mean, it is vastly, vastly bigger than the deck of cards is, right? And this radio is basically the same size as that deck of cards. So this thing is huge in comparison. However, there are some things about this radio that make it an awesome field radio. Now, this radio has a separate VFO, an encoder-style VFO with a knob, and it's got a separate RF gain, AF gain, and an adjustable filter. And that particular feature is something that all of these other CW radios lack. I have no way to adjust the filter on this. The filter on this, I think, is fixed. It's either 400 or 600 hertz. I forget which. And you cannot change it. It is what it is. Okay? This radio, I just turn that knob. You want 500 hertz? There you go. You want 1,000 hertz? There you go. You want to listen to single sideband at 2,500 hertz? No problem. There you go. All right, this has an infinitely variable between basically 0 and 2,500 hertz filter. This is the only one of these radios that has that. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're an experienced CW op, you know how important it is to be able to open that filter up or close that filter down. If I'm trying to pull out signals, you know, if I've got people calling me way off frequency, I want to be able to open that filter up, right? Because your smart hunters or your smart chasers aren't going to zero beat you. I want to open that filter up so I can hear them. Conversely, if I'm trying to pull a really weak signal out and I'm having a hard time, I can close that filter up and really dial in on just that frequency to pull that weak signal out. So having an adjustable filter is a game changer in a field radio, all right? This radio has some features that set it apart from all of the other CW-only radios we've looked at. So let me go ahead and plug some power into this. I'm going to plug a key into this. Plug my speaker into this. Okay. So, last thing I need is my dummy load. That's going to make it a little tippy because this is like a tripod. On the bottom of this radio, there are only 3 feet. 1, 2, 3. So it's a little tippy when you put the dummy load on here, but that's okay. It only tips a little bit. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn this radio on. Now I want you to listen. You hear that mess? This thing is affected by RFI just as bad as the mountain toppers are. All right. And the only one of these little CW radios that isn't affected by outside RFI that bad is that SW-3B. It's okay as long as you get away from your, you know, like this light that I'm using right now is causing interference. I've got a space heater going behind me because it's not terribly warm in here. That's causing interference. Now, it doesn't affect my FTDX10 here on my desk. It doesn't affect the SW3B, but the mountain toppers in this thing, it really does. And you can hear that. All right. So this radio, and this is going to be hard for you to see because this is probably going to flicker because this is a low refresh rate sort of LED display, but it's a 3-digit display. So this says 627. Okay. In order to see what band you're on, if I click the band button, you'll see we're on 14.0627. All right. So I'm currently on 20 meters. It doesn't show you that unless you push that. If I push it again, now it changes. There's 80. There's 40. There's 30. And we're back to 20. Okay. Not terribly informative. This says the least information on the display of any of these radios. Now, one option this radio has, which kind of cracks me up, is it's got a lamp for logging, and it's this little LED on the bottom. When you turn it on, it's a pretty anemic little LED. I guess if you were working out in the dark and you were trying to log, that might maybe be beneficial, but that's of questionable usefulness as far as I'm concerned. So on this radio, if I push that menu button, I can cycle through all my different menus. So I can change the LED brightness. There's my CW memories, play. All right. It'll show me my battery voltage, my antenna tuner. If it's got an installed tuner, it'll be in there. All right. There's all sorts of other stuff in here. And I'm not going to go through all of these different, there's repeat, right? It's got all these different options in here. Play, that's for my CW memories. All right. Like I said, tuner, it's got the separate ATU in it. To run the ATU, once you're in ATU mode, you press and hold. So these buttons, the white on top are your short presses. The yellow on the bottom are the long presses. And then you'll see we've got, if I push menu and band together at the same time, that turns the ATU on and it tunes it up. So my power output is 3.3 watts. And my SWR is 1:1. All right, now it should be because I'm on a dummy load, right? But this has an actual power meter and an actual SWR meter that you can only see it when you're using the antenna tuner, though. Okay, so I can't see the actual power output or the actual SWR unless I hit the tuner. So if you have a radio that doesn't have an internal tuner, you're not going to be able to see that stuff. Okay, so this radio, if I key this thing up, all right, if you look on the screen, you can see there's my power meter, okay? So here's full power at 3 watts and then everything down. And obviously if I'm running, if my SWR is high, it's gonna pull power. Depending on how much voltage you're running, it's gonna pull power. You can see right now we're running full power out of this radio, okay? So this has an actual watt display and it has a power meter down here on the bottom. It does have an S meter on top as well, although I found the S meter doesn't work terribly well. VFO is pretty obvious. You can just tune, and you can change the tuning rate also you can move that decimal point and make it whole numbers or decimals, and you can, right, so we can tune around and see what's what. Again, I don't have an antenna hooked up, but again, it's nice to have those adjustable gains, but like I said, the game changer on this radio is that adjustable filter. Man, when you're trying to pull out weak signals, or if you're trying to work a pile up and people are calling you off frequency, it's really nice to be able to adjust that filter. That's something I missed on the other radios that this radio has. Okay. Now this radio, let me go ahead and turn this off and unplug everything. And let's open it up. So there are 2 thumb screws on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and take those out. Now I can open this radio up. right, so here's all the guts. There's your battery holders. Okay, so this will hold 6 AA batteries. Now, you can't run very long on 6 AA batteries, and you don't get a lot of power output on 6 AA batteries. However, as a backup, that's a nice option to have. You can throw some AA batteries in this thing and have them as a backup, so if your primary battery dies, you can continue to operate. When I ran this on 6 lithium-ion AA's, I got about 1.3 to 1.5 watts out of it, and I was able to get about 20 minutes, maybe half an hour out of it. You could squeeze out an activation if you were efficient with it. I wouldn't want to operate it like that as that being my primary power source. All right, you could do it just to see how it worked, like I did, but I use this as a backup. Don't use this as your primary battery source. Okay. But again, these were all built by the person who bought them, and so the quality of the work is dependent entirely upon how well that person solders and how well they were able to follow the instructions. So let me go ahead and put this radio back together again. Okay, so now we've got it back together. So again, when we're looking at these two radios, they're very different radios that serve the same purpose, all right? And we'll talk about strengths and weaknesses of each of these radios in comparison to each other in just a minute. Let me show you what the manual for this radio looks like, because this is one of the things about Elecraft that Elecraft's manuals are fantastic, but these radios are complicated, okay? My mountain toppers, my SW3B, I put the manual right with it, with the radio, and carry it in the woods. I don't know about you, but I am not carrying a book into the woods with me. Now this is also the build manual for this radio, okay? So this goes through all the different, right, and you can see all the different things you're doing and you're checking off, and you can see that this person was very, very meticulous. They went through every single step and checked everything off as they were going along, made sure every single option was correct when they were done, right? They were very meticulous. They followed this to the T. And like I said, when you take this radio apart and you look inside, they did a very good job. Whoever built this radio did a very good job building this radio, all right? You know, they checked all the resistance across everything, did a very good job with this radio. Now, the actual manual to this radio doesn't start until way back here in the back. All right, so it goes through operation, all your different connections, your different power supplies. This radio will handle 7 to 14 volts, so it's got a much wider voltage range than that MTR-3B does. Antennas, keying devices, all the different controls and displays, how to change your tuning rate and your words per minute on your key, all your different potentiometers, all your different menu options and how to use it. It shows you short press, press, and long press for all those different things. And then there is all of the different menu functions here and what they do and how you change them. All right, and then there's advanced operating procedures like how to record and play back CW memories. Again, this radio will receive CW, lower sideband, and upper sideband. It won't transmit on lower and upper sideband, but it will listen on lower and upper sideband. That's a nice feature to have sometimes. Especially, you know, if you're you know, out in the woods, whatever, and you're just kind of tuning around, sometimes it's just kind of nice to listen and see what else is out there. All right, this will not transmit on lower and upper sideband though, so like you can't use this radio with Sodamate to spot yourself because while it can listen on lower and upper sideband, it can't transmit. So you know, those kind of things aren't going to help you very much. All the different scanning and frequency memories and there's all sorts of stuff in here, okay? You're not carrying that manual into the field. Nobody is. I mean, it's huge. I don't know how many pages it is, but it's long and it's very heavy and it's monstrous. In my Pelican case, I have just a little cheat sheet. This is just the basic functions. All right, so if I need to know how to do a particular function, this is the basic stuff that you need to do to operate the radio. I leave that in there with the radio, but it's not the whole manual. There's actually a separate manual just for the ATU. So the antenna tuner is a separate option, and it has a separate manual. It's not even in the book. So if you want to know how to use the tuner, you've got to print out this secondary manual with the function of the tuner. Okay, so these Elecraft radios can get kind of complicated. So let's talk about these two radios. Let's see if we can pick a winner. And these two radios are very different, but they do the exact same thing. So let's start with the winner from last time, which is our MTR-3B. And I'm going to say this is probably my favorite CW only radio just because it's so small and so light. Right, it's a 3-band radio, 20, 30, 40, which are kind of my 3 favorite bands. It's got 3 different CW memories. This radio only has 2 memories. Right, it's got memory 1, memory 2. This one has 3. This radio, I can do the direct frequency entry, so changing frequency on this thing is much faster than it is on this. This I've got to turn to VFO. Now it's easier. You can, for a lot of people that VFO might be easier. For me, the direct frequency entry, especially when I need to move quickly, is easier. Changing bands on this radio is easier. You just slide the slides. However, this can't handle much voltage. There's no option for internal batteries. There's no internal tuner. I can't adjust the filters. It's a very bare bones, simple radio, but it is tiny. The KX1, much bigger, much heavier. It does have knobs, which again are a blessing and a curse because they will be failure points. But it's got a full-size VFO knob. It's got adjustable AF and RF gains. It's got an adjustable filter. And like I said, man, I can't explain how important having an adjustable filter is on a field radio. It's got an internal antenna tuner, which may not seem important because if you're running resonant antennas. However, I find this a lot of my verticals. They're resonant. Man, sometimes depending on the ground conductivity, you just may not be able to get that thing to tune up. You're at like a 2 point something to 1 SWR, and you're like, oh man, I don't want to run a radio like this with that kind of SWR. I don't want to cook the internals in this thing. Dude, this thing, you just bang, hit that tuner, you're 1-to-1, rock and roll, okay? So having that tuner, while it's not necessary, is sure nice. It's nice to have as a backup. All right, this does have the ability to take its own key. So if I just want to pop a key on the front of this radio and not have to have an external key, I have that option, okay? Like I said, it has the ability to take internal batteries. This is a 4-band radio. That's a 3-band radio. Again, 80 meters is kind of useless in a field radio as far as I think, but look at the size difference between these two things. Now, when it comes down to these two radios, if I could only have one of these two radios, and it had to be my only CW field radio, like it was the only one I could have, and it had to do everything, it has to be the KX1. And it has to be the KX1 because it has the internal tuner. It has the ability to take internal batteries. It has an adjustable filter. If I can have multiple CW field radios, and I can have one for when I want to go really, really light, you bet I'm taking this thing. But if I can only have one, if you said right now, you have to sell every single CW radio you own except for one, as big as it is and as cumbersome as it can be, I'm going to have to go with the KX1 just because the feature set lends itself to more, it's more useful, right? Like I said, that tuner can be a game changer. Even if you're running a resonant antenna, like I said, sometimes they're not quite where you want them, man. And having that tuner be able to just bang those buttons and have it tune that antenna up is nice. Now, it's not a super wide range tuner. The tuner in this thing is, if you watch my video when I ran this with a random wire on it with a binding post attached directly to the BNC here, you'll see I couldn't get this radio to tune on 30 meters. It tuned on 40 and 20, no problem, okay? Now with a 9-to-1, it'll tune 30. But having that option is super nice. Like I said, man, having that adjustable filter, I cannot tell you how many times, you get somebody call, I hate it when people zero beat me when I'm trying to do an activation. If you call off frequency, I'm probably gonna pull you out of the pile. man, if you're off frequency a little too far, some of these radios, if it's only got, let's say, a 400 hertz filter and you're calling me off a little too far, on this radio, I might be like, okay, I hear a signal way up, but I can't really pull it out. Man, I can crank that filter up. Now I'm at 1,000 hertz, 1,100 hertz. Now I can pull you out. I can't do that on the other radios. So it does have some downsides. It's big, it's bulky, it's got some delicate encoders. It's not quite as high power output. Realistically, the difference between 3.5 watts and 5 watts is, what, half an S unit, maybe? Nobody really cares at that point. You know, the display doesn't tell me much information. This doesn't have a clock in it, all right? But at the end of the day, the features that this radio has in it kind of supersede those downsides. Is it the ultimate field radio for everybody? Absolutely not. For some people, would a KH1 be better? Probably. I don't operate standing up generally, so I don't really care about that. The side tone on that thing kills me. The price tag on that thing kills me. If that radio was $600 and had a reasonable side tone, I might consider it. Down the road, I still may buy one. We'll see. I think my next radio is actually going to be a ICOM 705. But for right now, as far as all my CW QRP radios go, if I had to keep only one, it'd be really hard between these two. But at the end of the day, I think it would have to be this one just because it's more useful overall. Okay. Now, if I could keep 2 of the 4, it would be these 2. I would sell the 4B and the SW3B because this radio does pretty much everything the SW or the 4B would do. It's got the same 4 bands, but it's got a lot of other features, and this has got a lot of the nice things that the MTR-4B has in a much smaller package. But at the end of the day, if I can only have one, it's going to be this KX1, and it's going to be a KX1. I don't care about 80 meters, but I care about 30 meters, and I care about the internal tuner. All right. So if you can find a 3-band with an internal tuner, if you got 40, 30, 20 with an internal tuner, that's perfect. This one's 80, 40, 30, 20. Like I said, how useful 80 is for me, it's hard to say. But for me, at the end of the day, it's probably going to have to be this radio. All right. Now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in the next video, I think I'm going to go straight to radios that will run multiple modes, and I'm not going to include this radio in that group. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my CW radios aside. We'll look at my radios that will run multiple modes, and then at the end, I will take this radio and I will put it up against the winner of that competition, and I'll decide which one of those radios I would keep. Keep in mind, I am primarily a CW operator, so I could live with a CW-only radio as my only field radio. I very rarely operate anything except for CW. I could count, in the past year, I could count the number of single sideband field activation QSOs I've had on my hands, all right? And I could count the digital ones on one hand. So, you know, for me, I could get away living with just a CW radio. A lot of people couldn't, right? Most people, a CW-only radio is probably not going to be their only field radio. I could absolutely get away with it. So what I will do is when I'm done with the entire series, so the next ones will be, I'll go through all my different radios that will run multiple modes, and then at the end, I will put this radio up against the winner of that to crown a champion. All right, now I have no idea how that one's going to go yet. It's going to kind of boil down to... I'm going to look at all the radios, I'm going to look at all the features, and we'll look at, you know, what makes the best overall radio, not for specific purposes, but just in general, if you could only keep one. All right, same idea with this. And then, like I said, we'll put this radio up against that radio, and we'll see what happens. So, if you can get your hands on either one of these radios, and you're a CW op, do it. They're both fantastic. You can't go wrong with either one of them. All right. So with that being said, I hope you found some of the information in this useful. Like I said, if you're looking at maybe buying a KH1, a lot of the things that make this radio compelling also make that radio compelling. All right. Like I said, I'm a little weirded out by the VFO and the volume on the bottom of the radio. A little bit the side tone. I struggle with the side tone, but man, being able to attach a whip to it is awesome. I mean, you can do that on this, but not quite the same in the same manner. But you know, like I said, if you're looking at if you're thinking something like this might be the way to go, take a look at a KH1. Way newer radio, better feature set, better internal tuner, 5 bands instead of this. It's got some more useful bands, right? It'll run some of your higher bands that this won't touch. I think it's a better radio overall for most people. But for me right now, I think that the KX1 just suits my operating style better. All right. Like I said, I want to get my hands on a KH1 and see what I think. I may change my mind once I play with one. But just the price versus the feature set and that god-awful side tone, I don't know. We'll see. But at any rate, folks, there's your winner for CW-only rigs. Next time you see me, I'm going to have some full-featured rigs here on the table, and we'll do the same thing. So, until next time, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. 7-3.